Capricorn One wasn't just another conspiracy thriller. It was a $4.8 million independent film that outgrossed everything around it, used real NASA hardware to portray NASA as the villain, and put O.J. Simpson in a spacesuit 6 years before anyone knew why that would matter.
It can't be science fiction.
Today we're counting down 14 weird facts about Capricorn One. Stick around for number one, because Peter Hyams has directed 2 films starring men later tried for the murders of their wives, and he has a very specific way of talking about it. 14. The idea came from working on Apollo broadcasts. Peter Hyams did not come up with the premise of Capricorn One in a vacuum. He was there. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Hyams worked as a television broadcaster covering the Apollo program missions for CBS.
Everybody. So this is pretty close to the technology that we think is going to be around.
He was present for the broadcasts, watching the footage come in, understanding how it was presented, recognizing how completely the American public accepted what they were shown on television as evidence of what was actually happening in space. That professional experience planted a specific question in his head: how would anyone know? The images came from NASA. The audio came from NASA. The verification came from the same institution conducting the mission. Hyams wrote the first draft of the Capricorn One script in 1972. Nobody wanted to make it. Then Watergate happened. The public's relationship with institutional truth changed overnight. And a script about government deception that had been sitting on a shelf for 3 years suddenly had an audience waiting for it.
You sound so close. It's hard to believe you really are that far away in space.
13. Watergate revived a dead script. Peter Hyams wrote the Capricorn One screenplay in 1972. For 3 years, he couldn't get anyone to make it. The premise: that the United States government would fake a Mars landing rather than admit failure, and seemed too extreme, too cynical, too implausible as a piece of mainstream entertainment. Then the Watergate scandal broke. Richard Nixon resigned, and the American public discovered that their government had been lying to them about considerably more than a space program. The script that had been rejected as too paranoid became, almost overnight, a story that felt entirely plausible. Hyams brought the script to producer Paul Lazarus. The two of them took it to Lou Grade, the British entertainment impresario who had recently moved into film production. Grade reportedly agreed to finance the film after 5 minutes. A script that nobody would touch in 1972 became green-lit on the strength of a political scandal that its premise had quietly anticipated years before it happened. 12. NASA cooperated fully, despite being portrayed as the villain. The central institution of Capricorn One is NASA, a corrupt, murderous organization that fakes a Mars landing and then tries to kill 3 astronauts to cover it up. Given that portrayal, the production's relationship with the real space agency required careful navigation. Producer Paul Lazarus had an existing working relationship with NASA from his previous film Future World, and that relationship proved decisive. Despite the script's deeply unflattering characterization of the agency, NASA agreed to cooperate with the production. The filmmakers were allowed to use a genuine prototype Apollo lunar module as a prop, a piece of real government hardware appearing in a film explicitly about government deception. The cooperation saved enormous amounts of money and gave the film's most pivotal scenes a physical authenticity that no replica could have matched. The producer himself admitted he was stunned the agency approved the script at all. An institution being portrayed as capable of murder lent its equipment to prove the portrayal looked realistic. Some relationships transcend the material. 11. The budget was $4.8 million, and it beat Star Wars at the independent box office. Capricorn One was made for $4.8 million, and a number that makes it look like a minor production against the backdrop of 1977, when Star Wars was rewriting what blockbuster filmmaking meant. The film was financed entirely independently through Lou Grade's ITC Entertainment. With Warner Brothers handling distribution, it had no studio infrastructure, no franchise, and no major stars at the peak of their commercial power. Elliott, Gould, James Brolin, and Sam Waterston were recognizable, but not the kind of names that guaranteed opening weekend business. When Capricorn One was released in May 1978, bumped from a planned February slot by strong preview screenings and the delay of Richard Donner's Superman, it became the most successful independently financed film of the year. A $4.8 million conspiracy thriller, opened in the same summer as the aftermath of Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and outperformed every independent production around it. Audiences stood up and cheered during screenings. Hyams later noted it wasn't because it was such a great movie, it was because certain films strike certain chords. 10. The Rattlesnake was Tuna Sashimi, but Airlines still cut the scene. One of Capricorn One's most viscerally unsettling moments comes when astronaut Brubaker, stranded in the Mojave Desert with nothing to eat, catches a rattlesnake and gnaws on it raw. James Brolin did not actually eat a raw snake. The snake was real and was handled on camera, but the piece the actor put in his mouth was tuna sashimi, substituted at the last moment for obvious reasons. The moment read convincingly enough on screen that it caused a specific distribution problem. After the film entered circulation, Airlines requested that the rattlesnake scene be removed from in-flight versions of the film. The content wasn't too violent for commercial aviation. It was too viscerally nauseating at altitude. A man eating raw snake on a 10-inch screen at 35,000 feet was deemed likely to create problems for the passengers around the person watching it. The scene was cut from in-flight prints. The tuna sashimi that read as raw reptile was considered too disturbing to serve, with complimentary peanuts. 9. O.J. Simpson was cast for financial leverage, not acting. O.J. Simpson's presence in Capricorn One was not primarily a creative decision. Producer Paul Lazarus and Lou Grade assembled an ensemble of recognizable names specifically to pre-sell the film internationally, a standard ITC entertainment strategy for independent productions that needed overseas revenue commitments before domestic release. Simpson, at the time a well-known figure from his NFL career and early television appearances, was included as part of that financial calculus. He was chosen as much for his name's value in pre-sale negotiations as for his performance. Critics noted that his character, Commander John Walker, was given limited dramatic material and that Simpson was wisely not asked to carry scenes beyond his range. His presence in the film became considerably more complicated when he was charged with murder in 1994. Director Hyams later addressed it with dry precision, noting that Robert Blake had starred in his first feature, Busting an O.J. Simpson in Capricorn One, and that some directors have Lifetime Achievement Awards, while his particular piece of trivia involved two leading men subsequently tried for the murders of their wives. 8. The film was scheduled as a February dump, then Superman saved it. Warner Brothers did not initially believe in Capricorn One. The studio, which handled distribution but had not financed the film, scheduled it for a February 1978 release, a calendar slot historically used to park films the studio doesn't expect to perform. February is not where studios put their promising product, it's where they put films they have contractual obligations to release and no real faith in. Then two things happened. Preview screenings came back strong. Audiences were responding to the film in ways the studio hadn't predicted, and Richard Donner's Superman, which had been scheduled for a prime summer slot, was delayed by production problems. A summer opening became available. Warner Brothers reassessed. The film was moved from February to May 1978, given a proper wide release, and allowed to find the audience that the preview screenings had indicated was waiting for it. The most successful independent film of the year nearly opened in February as a throwaway. A superhero film running behind schedule accidentally gave a conspiracy thriller the summer it deserved. 7. The Mars set was built on a real military hangar in Mojave. The clandestine military base where the astronauts are held and forced to perform the fake Mars landing was not a studio set in the conventional sense. The production used the exterior of a real military hangar near Mojave Airport in Mojave, California, a structure that was genuinely a former military facility rather than a construction built for the film. The interior Mars surface was built on sound stages at CBS Studio Center in Studio City. The combination of real military architecture on the outside and manufactured desert landscape on the inside gave the facility a physical credibility that the film's premise required. This had to look like a place where a serious government conspiracy could actually be executed. The hangar exterior that appears in Capricorn One still stands. It has since been renovated and renamed the Stewart O. Witt Event Center. A building used to house the fictional apparatus of a government cover-up is now an event venue. The gravel laid down for the film's gas station set nearby is also still there. 6. The longer cut was lost for decades and recovered in Japan. Capricorn One was released in 2 different versions. The version distributed in North America runs 123 minutes. The version released in Japan and the United Kingdom ran 129 minutes, 6 minutes longer, containing additional scenes including the docking of the spacecraft during the Mars landing sequence and different cuts of key details. After the film initial release, the rights holder ITC Entertainment took the position that the 123-minute version was the definitive cut and that the longer version no longer existed. For decades, that was effectively true. The 129-minute cut was inaccessible. In 2019, film material from the longer version was discovered at the National Film Archive of Japan. It had been sitting there for over 40 years. The recovered footage was remastered and released as bonus content exclusively on a Japanese Blu-ray edition of the film with ITC's permission. The version that the rights holder had declared non-existent turned out to be preserved in an archive on the other side of the world waiting to be found. 5. That the black helicopters became a conspiracy theory symbol. When Capricorn One was in production in 1977, the term black helicopters carried specific meaning in American conspiracy culture, a reference to unmarked military aircraft associated with theories about government surveillance and covert domestic operations. Director Peter Hyams knew exactly what he was referencing. The 2 black helicopters that pursue Elliott Gould and Telly Savalas across the Mojave in the film's climactic chase were not simply a convenient action movie device. They were a deliberate invocation of an existing paranoid vocabulary. In the years following the film's release, Capricorn One contributed to the spread and popularization of that imagery. The black helicopter became more culturally embedded, partly because millions of people had watched them hunt a reporter through a desert canyon. A film about a manufactured reality used a symbol from real conspiracy culture, then fed it back into that culture amplified. The helicopters were already meaningful when Hyams put them in the film. They meant more after he was done with them. 4. The film directly fueled real moon landing conspiracy theories. Capricorn One did not create the Apollo moon landing conspiracy theory that predated the film, but it accelerated it significantly. The film's central premise, that a space mission could be faked on a studio soundstage using the same technology employed to broadcast the real thing, gave conspiracy theorists a coherent, dramatically realized framework for an argument they had previously been making with less narrative support. In 2020 and 2021, a viral video appeared on BitChute, Twitter, and Facebook, claiming to be a WikiLeaks release of footage showing the moon landing being filmed in a Nevada desert. The footage was from Capricorn One. WikiLeaks had released no such video. The fictional film about a fake space mission had been repackaged as documentary evidence of an actual fake space mission and distributed across social media platforms where it was viewed by millions of people. A thriller made to entertain audiences in 1977 was being used as proof of historical fraud in 2021. Peter Hyams made a movie. The internet turned it into a source. 3. James Irwin, a real moonwalker, was a technical consultant. Among the technical consultants on Capricorn One was James Irwin, a genuine NASA astronaut who had walked on the moon as part of the Apollo 15 mission in 1971. Irwin had been the lunar module pilot on that mission, one of 12 human beings to have physically stood on the surface of another world. He served as an advisor on a film whose entire premise was that the kind of mission he had actually performed could be faked. The irony of a real moonwalker helping to make a convincing fictional Mars hoax is specific enough to function as its own commentary on the film's central argument. Irwin's involvement ensured that the technical details of the astronaut experience, what the suits felt like, how mission procedures worked, what the psychological reality of the situation would be, were grounded in something genuine. The man who had done the real thing helped make the fake version look authentic. Whether he found that arrangement philosophically comfortable is not recorded. 2. Telly Savalas was cast to share scenes. With Elliott Gould, Telly Savalas' casting as crop duster pilot Al Bain was not accidental. Director Peter Hyams and producer Paul Lazarus brought Savalas in specifically because of what he could do opposite Elliott Gould. The two actors had a complementary energy, Gould's harried, sardonic reporter and Savalas' gruff, amused eccentric, that Hyams recognized as something the film needed in its final act. By the time Al Bain appears, the audience has spent considerable time with the mechanics of the conspiracy. Savalas walks in and resets the tone entirely, breathing comedy and life into sequences that had become taut and grim. Critics who found the film uneven almost universally exempted the Savalas scenes from their complaints. Variety called the Savalas and Gould pairing a bullseye in an otherwise scattershot cast. An audience that had been watching a paranoid government thriller for 90 minutes was rewarded with a bald man in a biplane who seemed to have wandered in from a completely different and better film. That was entirely by design. One, Peter Hyams has a very specific way of describing his career. Peter Hyams directed 2 films featuring men who were later tried for the first-degree murders of their wives. His first feature film, Busting, starred Robert Blake. Capricorn One starred O.J. Simpson. Blake was acquitted at trial in 2005 after being charged with the 2001 shooting death of his wife, Bonnie Lee Backley. Simpson was acquitted at his criminal trial in 1995, following the 1994 murders of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, though he was found liable in a subsequent civil trial. Hyams has addressed this coincidence directly on multiple occasions. With the specific equanimity of a man who has had time to develop the right tone for it, his formulation is consistent. Some directors have AFI Lifetime Achievement Awards, some directors have multiple Oscars, and his particular distinction is that he has made films with 2 leading men who were subsequently tried for the first-degree murders of their wives. He says it is a joke. It is not entirely a joke. Capricorn One is a film about the gap between what people are shown and what actually happened. Hyams has been living in that gap since 1972, a $4.8 million thriller that NASA helped make, that Watergate made possible, and that the internet later turned into evidence of crimes it was only ever pretending to depict. Which fact hit hardest? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more deep dives into the films that knew something the rest of us were still figuring out. Until next time.